All right, so today's notes, guys, is going to be on the story of New Netherland or the New Netherlands. Just a different settlement. We've been looking mainly at the English settlements coming over here, but they weren't the only people making their way over from Europe. And one of the best success stories is the story of the Netherlands and their kind of quest of coming over here and trying to establish their foothold in the New World as well. So that's what we're talking about. New Netherland. Spoilers, it ends up becoming New York and New York City. So you could argue that they're still kind of around here. So let's just kind of dive into it with the beginning of the colony here. So since the 1400s, European explorers have searched for the westward passage to Asia. All these different explorers, Columbus, Cartier, Vespucci, so on, all tried to find this thing called the Northwest Passage. And you should have heard about the Northwest Passage in middle school. So in 1609, you get this guy named Henry Hudson. Yep, like the Hudson River. He was hired by the Dutch West India Company to find the Northwest Passage. Basically, what they thought was that there has to be some type of river route or lake route or some type of way to not have to go around North and South America. There's got to be the way that we can just go through it, save a bunch of time, and time is money during these times. Save on shipping costs. It's a big win if they can find a way through. Well, modern day times, we know that there is not a way through, and that's why we built the Panama Canal in Panama, okay? Because there is no route through. There is no Northwest Passage. We had to basically man-make our own, all right? But that wasn't for a long time, and they did not know this. So, Hudson did not find the passage, but he did claim the land around New York Harbor for the Netherlands. The Dutch West India Company saw this land as an opportunity to establish a trading post for beaver skins in North America. So this would be kind of like a company charter, right? We had the Dutch West India Company. They kind of funded this Northwest Passage venture. It was a failure, but they figured they would stick around and become more of a trading partner. All right, so in 1614, the first group of colonists settled near present-day Albany, New York at Fort Orange. Problems at the colony forced the Dutch to abandon Fort Orange in 1624 for the new capital down the river, New Amsterdam. The entire colony was called New Netherland. New Amsterdam is New York City. All right, so New Amsterdam is present-day New York City, and obviously New Netherland is just New York. All right, this is just kind of explaining that this guy here, Mr. Peter, was able to buy the whole island of Manhattan for exchange for various gems and like little items. So he basically is establishing this trend of basically fleecing Native American tribes. All right, so the Native Americans get a few gems and whatnot, and this guy and the other people from the Dutch West India Company get the whole island of Manhattan. All right, so not a good trade for the Native Americans at the time. So who were the Dutch? For you guys that do not know, the Dutch come from the Netherlands, a seagoing nation in northern Europe. Dutch power reached its heights in 1600s when they established trading colonies in Asia, Africa, Brazil, the Caribbean, and North America. New Netherland would be the North American arm of an empire that traded in spices, sugars, coffees, furs, and slaves. The Dutch were known as a hardworking, orderly people who tolerated diversity, which made them perfect in the New World. Now, here's something you guys probably do not know. The Dutch, during like the 1600s, are a superpower, okay? They're up there with Spain, England, France, and when we talk about a seagoing nation, they are basically focused on one thing, and that's trade and making money. So they become powerful that way. They don't really have a strong army or anything like that. We'll see that kind of be their downfall. But the way they're able to become such an empire is they become such a trading power. As you can see here, they're trading in all these different items, and they're trading all over the world, right? Asia, Africa, Brazil, the Caribbean, North America. They're everywhere, and this is going to be like another business venture for them. So the Dutch, really powerful, really rich, great traders, great at sailing, just perfectly built for the time period right now. All right, so what did it look like? So New Netherlands stretched up the Hudson River to present-day Albany and into New Jersey, Connecticut, and Delaware. The capital city was New Amsterdam, New York now, but other settlements included Haarlem, Brooklyn, and Visselen. Outside the towns, land was divided into huge farming estates called patroons. The largest patroons included Russellwick and the estate of Jonas Bronk, aka the Bronx. All right, so we still get some names that are kind of stick around. Like, New York City is broken up into the 5 boroughs. Basically, New York City is so big that they have to kind of break up their giant city into mini cities. So, and one of those boroughs is called the Bronx, and one of the boroughs is Harlem. So some of these names kind of stick around. So what was the government like in the New World, the New Netherlands? So New Netherlands was a cooperative colony of the Dutch West India Company. They were basically run by this thing called the Directors General. The Directors General was a group of like 4 or 5 guys, and they basically made all the decisions for the company and for the colony as well. They were responsible for keeping order, maintaining trade, dealing with Native American tribes. And colonists complained often both to the company and to the Dutch government. So, tough job for the Directors General. They're trying to keep everything in order, but obviously in the New World it's tough to do that. Life's not the same, life's different, equaling different rules, and obviously upsetting the constituents who are working for the company. All right, so who came over? This is a big question. Remember, we saw that you need to have the right people coming over to be successful. We saw Jamestown at first, right? They didn't bring the right type of people over, and it almost cost everyone their lives. And it did cost most people their lives. So who came over for the Dutch? So the West India Company had a hard time recruiting Dutch settlers to New Netherlands because they saw better opportunities elsewhere, like Brazil, the Caribbean, Asia. There was already established business-making markets for them, and the New World was kind of like a high-risk, high situation. Yeah, I could get over there and I could basically run a monopoly and become mega rich, or I could go over there and die within a year, right? So it's definitely a high risk, high reward. So in response, the company allowed anyone willing to work to settle in the colony. They promised of land and riches, and this drove all different types of settlers to the colony. And again, it's anyone who will work, okay? So this is going to be a little bit different than we're used to. So because they were going to let everybody in, by the year 1664, so basically about, 50, 60 years since they started, the Dutch made up only 50% of the population of New Netherlands. The rest included English, French, Italian, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, and African, basically with the slaves coming over. So we have a huge hodgepodge of groups, just where you're from, but also religiously as well. And of course, we always talk about religion during this times because it's mega important. And people didn't really like the other religions, right? They weren't very tolerable or tolerant, like kind of today where definitely there's different religious groups everywhere, but everyone's okay with it. So Christians of all denominations, as well as Jews and atheists thrived in the colony. The first Jews arrived in 1654 and were allowed to stay against the Director General wishes. So the group, the head people who were in charge, did not want them there. They're not very tolerant, but basically the average citizen gave it the okay. So the Directors General kind of just, let it slide in their mind. All right, so how'd they make money? Basically, the number one way they made money was trading beaver skins with Native Americans. That's the number one way, and that's the number one reason why they were there in the first place. It was for the beaver trade. And the reason why is that in Europe at the time, the number one fashion was the top hat. Okay. Have you guys ever seen Alice in Wonderland, Mad Hatter? I can't really see. There's something in the way there. Hopefully I spelled it right. Mad Hatter. All right, so this was what I'm talking about here. Okay, this hat was everyone wore it. Okay, and they get the nickname the Mad Hatter, and that's a real term because everyone's wearing that hat. And if you can see, you see a little ring right there. Well, normally that ring is on the inside of your hat to keep it shaped. And to help keep it shaped, they would dip that ring into mercury and then lace the inside of it. So basically the inside that was touching your head would be soaked in mercury. And if you wore the hat long enough, eventually the mercury would soak through your skin and into your brain, and it would cause you to go insane. Like for real, like you are poisoning yourself slowly over time because of the mercury. It's like if you're sweating, the mercury is able to kind of get into your skin and get into your brain and causes you to basically turn into a lunatic. So the Mad Hatters were like a real thing in Europe at this time. People started losing their minds, especially those who wore their hats, a long period of time. So if you're a big hat wearer now, just kind of think about that, how different it might be. So that's why they wanted to do it. They were making these hats hand over fist. To make them, you need beaver skin, and we need a lot of it. So it was a good opportunity to make a bunch of money fast and quick. So what was life like for the colonists? Just like every other civilization we've kind of looked at or colony, they're going to have a social hierarchy. Basically, it's the rich monarchs on the top, then the landowners, then the tradesmen and farmers, workers, and then slaves on the bottom of the hierarchy. Um, Life was tough though. Clothes, tools, and other equipment that were made by hand. There was no running water, no electricity, no health system. Most Dutch colonists kind of made items like they did back when they were in Holland or in the Netherlands, right? The Dutch doors, Dutch windmills, things like that. Outside of New Amsterdam was even harder. Not only are you still dealing with like normal 17th century farm life problems, you also had to deal with constant Native American attacks on you. And we'll see that become an issue as things move forward. Eventually, the colony just gets too big, and they need more land. And obviously, if you're spreading out and taking other people's lands, there's going to be a fight that's going to ensue. All right. Schooling is actually really important in the Dutch colonies. The first school was established in 1638. It exists today still, so you can still people still go to the first school that was basically ever established in New York, and it's still there. They're both private schools and public schools supported by the West India Company. So education was important. Obviously, if our job is most people who are in the Dutch India Company and in New Netherlands, they're in some type of business world, right? So you kind of got to teach people and make sure they can read and write and do math and counting stuff to make sure that the businesses can flourish. And that's why the Dutch India Company kind of sponsored that or created schools to make sure that they would always have a constant flow of workers who were competent. All right. How did the Dutch get along with Native Americans? Well, at first it was good because they were going to work together for the beaver trade. Well, eventually, as time goes on, more and more people came to the colonies and they needed more land and would just continually, make bad deals with Native Americans, or they'd make a deal but not hold up their end of the bargain. So as time goes on, the relationship sours. All right. So colonists often tricked tribes into warring with each other, as well as spreading smallpox to the tribes. The smallpox blanket situation is in effect here. Basically, they would have blankets, infect them with smallpox, give them to the American tribes, and then they would use them, and then everyone would get smallpox. And that smallpox is very deadly at this time. So basically, kind of like bio-warfare. Relations between the two groups worsened in 1643 when William Kieft attempted to tax the tribe in Manhattan, causing a brutal year-long war called Kieft's War. This guy's single-handedly responsible for starting a year-long war with Native Americans, obviously interrupting business, interrupting trade, and obviously costing people their lives. So pretty bad move by William Kieft there. And this is kind of a good quote here, kind of showcasing what they thought about Native Americans. This guy right here is one of the directors general, so he's one of the main guys in charge. I value the blood of one Christian more than of 100 Indians. So that quote right there just kind of sums it up in a nutshell, kind of what the Dutch thought of the Native Americans there. What was slavery like? Again, slaves do show up. So the first African slaves arrived from Angola in 1626. The Dutch had established rich trade in slaves by the 1600s. Slaves were used in construction, building roads, dock hands, farms, and the patroons, as well as household servants. Slaves were considered property. They could not move around or go where they please. Just not good stuff. But obviously, back in those times, that was kind of standard operating procedure, unfortunately. Luckily, as time's gone on, we've been able to kind of hopefully right some of these wrongs here. So what was slavery like in New Netherlands? In the New Amsterdam, slaves were often rented out to colonists in exchange for a fee, of which the enslaved person received a small amount. Some Africans brought their freedom this way. So it's kind of like, yep, you work for me, I'm going to give your your owner a lot of money, but I'm going to give you a little piece too. And if you save up all these money that I'm giving you, eventually you can buy yourself out. I'm going to pause right now because my 15-minute timer is going to run out, so we're going to have to do a part 2 here to finish up. Oh, how much do I go faster? Never mind. We're going to go fast. So even freed slaves had restrictions. They could not be out late. They were not allowed in the city after a certain hour. So basically, you're under scrutiny. Recently, archaeologists have recovered an African burial ground in Manhattan, proof that colony society forced Africans to even bury their dead in separate locations from the white. So they were there. They were treated as slaves, maybe in some cases a little bit better, but for the most part, they were not. All right, 5 seconds left. Good day today. Email me if you have any questions. Bye-bye.